Douglas McGregor speaking on the recent MOU. We'll get into it.
Well, McGregor, welcome here, my dear friend, and thanks for accommodating my schedule. Apologies for the late start. Let's start with history, Colonel. Isn't it a truism that in war, the peace agreements are written by the victors?
Yes, I think that's an accurate statement. I'm not sure, though, that we have a peace agreement. What we have is called a memorandum of understanding, which contains, at least in theory, a framework for discussion. In the meantime, we seem to have agreed to not shoot at Iran. Iran has agreed not to shoot at us, and the strait is being opened. Everything else in that document is interesting, but frankly, those are the salient points, and we are not going to know more until they sit down face to face and actually negotiate.
So instead of the unconditional surrender, which President Trump many times demanded, the Iranians emerged from a confrontation with the world's most powerful military, not having just survived, but basically celebrating.
Well, I think that's true. There are a couple of things, though, that, first of all, we haven't seen the leaks yet. The leaks that are going to come out of various sources inside and outside of the White House, who will claim to have been present when this dramatic reversal of fortune occurred.
Right.
Donald Trump suddenly decided, whoops, I'm changing my mind. And at that point, we'll find out perhaps what really drove the decision making. But I think we have to say, I think President Trump was presented with certain undeniable facts. The war with Iran was doing enormous damage to the world as well as to us. Cut off 20% of the global supply of liquefied natural gas and fuel. Hundreds of millions of people worldwide who rely on liquefied natural gas for fuel. Residential heating, cooking, and industrial manufacturing were miserable. The closure of the strait also halted the export of roughly 30% of the global supply of ammonia-based nitrogen fertilizer. Iranian strikes halted the production of 30% of the global supply of helium used in making semiconductors and medical imaging devices. I mean, we could go on and on and on. But I think somebody finally reached him and said, look, boss, this is playing hell with the whole world.
And not only the exports that come out the Straits of Hormuz, the imports. The GCC receive, I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but they receive a staggering percentage of all of their food via the Straits. So it's not just the West that's suffering.
We need to get out of this. We need to get out of this as soon as possible. This is hurting all of our friends. We're not profiting from this. We're not getting anywhere. And oh, by the way, Europe probably as popular as Attila the Hun right now around most of the world and inside the United States.
I think he was probably also warned, Colonel, and please comment on this if you have a different view, that the strategic oil reserves, which had been released in order to suppress the price of gasoline, even though it doubled in the past 2 months, were dangerously low, and we only had about another 2.5 to 3 weeks of these reserves left.
Oh, I think that had an impact. There's no doubt about it. Of course, at the same time, we have to realize that people were already beginning to find workarounds. These pipelines that run from the Persian Gulf over to the Red Sea. That's one example. There were others. Huge quantities of coal are being shipped to India, China, Japan, and other places in order to fire up heating plants, power plants. I think all of that's part of it. I think he understood that. I also think, judging from his remarks, I may be wrong about this, that someone finally got through to him that what the Israelis have been doing is atrocious. I mean, when he mentioned you don't have to destroy an apartment building to get to one person, I was sitting there like a lot of other people and said, well, yeah, where have you been, Mr. President?
And it's the same as Gaza. Bombing and drone strikes on refugee camps. And they justify it by saying, oh yeah, there was a Hamas leader in there. And it's mainly women and children. People, like you say, I know our Governments and the American governments are bought and paid for by the lobby. Read the book Lobbying for Zionism on Both Sides of the Atlantic by Ilian Pape, or Pape, however you pronounce his surname. They're entrenched, but they're finally now starting to say what. Surely this is going to be a change for the better.
This sort of nonsense has been going on for years. Well, I think that may too have been a come to Jesus moment, no pun intended for him. The problem now is twofold. First of all, we don't know what else is going to be negotiated. We hear about the nuclear matters and all sorts of other details. How will that sort out? It's hard to tell. But this is not a peace treaty. This is not a peace agreement. This is not something that Congress is being asked to support or refute, validate, or denounce. So we're not there. The other thing is, I'm wondering now if anybody has finally figured out that the military power we have, though impressive, is not capable of everything, everywhere, all the time. And that before you apply it, before you commit forces, you sit down and look carefully at what you've got. You look at what your opponent has. You look at the mission. You make a decision. Is this even attainable? And if the answer is probably not, don't do it.
And you can't. History has shown you cannot bomb a country into submission. You can't bomb a country into submission. People may say, oh yeah, Hiroshima. But that isn't what finally made them give up. People, you could argue it was the Russians, the troops on the ground. You can't bomb a people into submission unless you bomb all of them and kill them all. It's not going to happen. They're going to rally around the flag.
I mean, it seems simple, but I don't think that assessment was ever made, Judge.
Here's the, excuse me for clearing my throat, Colonel. Here's the comment the president made, which was the eye-opener to you, to which you referred a few minutes ago, where he is harshly critical of Israel's attacks on Hezbollah. Chris, number 18.
I'll tell you what, Israel's fighting Hezbollah too long and too many people are being killed. And you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses, and they're not all Hezbollah, that I can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah. Because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it. I didn't like where 2 hours before we're signing the agreement that there was an attack in Lebanon, in Beirut. It wasn't like in the southern side, and it was in Beirut. I did not like that. I let them know that. I didn't like it, not at all.
I wonder if Netanyahu and company thought that the attack would disrupt the agreement, whereas in reality it seems to have accelerated it. This is the attack that the president's talking about was Sunday night, our time.
I think the president is determined to end our participation in the war. And therefore, he is going to do whatever he can to end it on our side. And that may include telling the Israelis that if they persist and refuse to support the provisions regarding Lebanon in the agreement, that he may not be able to support them. Now, we'll see if that's even possible.
And Iran have made it perfectly clear. They're standing up for their Muslim brothers and sisters. They're standing up for it. If you care to learn anything about the Shia, one of the first things that Imam said to me was standing for the oppressed. That's what they're all about.
Something else, though, that's very interesting, and only people who have been watching this long enough will appreciate this. Many years ago, we were lobbied very hard by many people, not just Israel, to push the Syrians out of Lebanon. In fact, Eddie Lutwak grabbed me and he made the comment at the time, this is very stupid. The Syrians actually impart stability to Lebanon. If we push them out, what is to restrain Hezbollah? Well, guess what happened? We pushed them out. Now he's talking about a very different Syria, Judge. This is a Syria that is not remotely friendly to Israel, is certainly not a reliable partner regarding anything strategic in the area, and is ultimately let's be frank, beholden to Mr. Erdogan in Turkey.
And yet it's Assyria whose leadership we once incarcerated and we put in the job.
Yes, yeah. But I think we need to understand that, the giant in the room that nobody ever mentions, what I call the 600-pound gorilla, is Turkey, or Turkey, as they want us to call it. The Turks have a real interest in everything going on there. And this is another consequence of the outcome of this war. The Israelis obsessed over Iran for too many years. Iran was many things, but it was never their existential threat. They turned it into an existential threat. The existential threat was always loitering in the background, and it was called Turkey or Turkey. It's still there. They're beginning to wake up to it, and they're going to have their hands full because the region now, for the foreseeable future, is not going to be dominated by the United States or Israel. I think we have to expect that this region will be dominated by the two great powers that dominated it for hundreds and hundreds of years, if not thousands. One are the Turks. Two are the Persians. We call them Iranians. It's the same thing. Turks and Persians. They're going to dominate everything now because our strategic influence, whatever we say, has been very seriously weakened by the outcome of this war.
And look at what Iran have managed to do to all the American bases, punishing the GCC for being complicit, for letting America attack them from their bases. The radar systems Iran have taken out, precision. Yes, at the start, a lot of stuff was getting intercepted, but we now know the interceptors are low. It's changed. The Middle East has changed, and for the better.
How bad a setback is this for Israel in general and Netanyahu specifically?
I think it's a disaster for Israel. And this was always my reason for opposition to broadening the war in Gaza to make war on the whole region, which is effectively what the Israelis did. And they were absolutely confident that they had such complete control of us that between us and them, they could mobilize firepower and strength to defeat Iran. I was never very confident of that. I always urged against it. And now what they've done is that they've unbalanced the region against them. The Israelis have no friends left in the region, and we are not going to restore our former military presence in the region to its pre-war height. It's not going to.
Israel haven't got any friends left in the world. Look at that favourability. Look at the polls. And Netanyahu, he's going to lose these elections coming up, by the way. I'm sorry for keeping interrupting, but this is important. Like, Netanyahu will lose these elections coming up. They've got to have elections before October in Israel. And once he loses said election and he's no longer prime minister, he is going to jail at best. He will be tried, Nuremberg style, and we know what happened to them.
Happen. First of all, we don't need it. It was never necessary for us. It was a legacy of the Cold War to a large extent. And we had an interest in downsizing in any case, just as we have an interest in downsizing in Europe and elsewhere and Northeast Asia. So that's not going to happen. What does Israel do? Israel has steadily refused under any and all circumstances to fundamentally assimilate itself into the region. It won't do it. So how long can it last as it sits there behind its walls, refusing under any circumstances to cooperate with anybody on the other side of the wall?
Well, if the United States will not extend the war for greater Israel, will Jewish people begin to leave Israel? I mean, you have argued that the entire architecture that the United States and the United Kingdom created after World War II will soon be gone.
Yes, absolutely. The whole Sykes-Picot construct is all going to be swept away. I'm not confident that the so-called Emirates are going to survive, or Bahrain, or Kuwait, or Qatar. Now, perhaps Qatar, for various reasons, could slip through and survive. Qatar has good relations with the Turks. Qatar wants relations with Iran. They may be able to do it. The others, I'm not so sure. There may be new states that emerge. That's eminently possible under new leadership. Some may go away completely. I think Kuwait is very much on the road to extinction because Iraq, which is a strong ally of Iran, and a lot of people don't understand that. They think we actually fought and won a war in Iraq. We didn't. That's almost a foregone conclusion, I think. So you're right. The world has been turned upside down. This is a dramatic moment in the history of the Middle East and in world history, as important as the defeat of France by the Prussians in 1871 and the creation of united Germany.
And this is the thing with the Israelis, they're all dual citizens. When times get tough, they can all leave. They can all go. People forget the likes of Iran. The majority of the people there don't even have passports, and they love their country. They love that soil. People are drawn to the soil they're from. This is the thing. The Israelis will just up and leave. They have no attachment. They're blindsided by the Greater Israel Project, but they have no attachment to that soil. That's why the Palestinians are willing to die for it. This is the thing. Persia, they've been there for what, 3,000-4,000 years. They're a civilization. They're not occupiers. And the GCC, these family dictatorships who worship material and monetary goods. Look at the Shia. I know I keep going on about it, but look how Ayatollah Khamenei lived. Humble. Only wanted to be surrounded by books. He just wanted to be in his library. Even his father, when he lost his eyesight, he would go and read to him. They only care about knowledge and God. That's all they care about, Allah. Honestly, the GCC, it's a wake-up call to them. Because their free reign of debauchery, let's say what it is, they're not real Muslims. It's over.
This is a strategic inflection point on a nearly global scale.
A few minutes ago, you articulated the economic consequences of this war, a war of choice. We know it's a war of choice. We know that Netanyahu and his colleagues talked Trump and his colleagues into doing this, and there was apparently little or no resistance in Trump's inner circle. But in war, Colonel, shouldn't there be a plan B? Shouldn't the Pentagon and the State Department have anticipated
There wasn't even a plan A. Come on.
the natural and probable economic consequences if the Israelis were wrong and this would not be over in 96 hours?
Of course, there's no question about it. But the plan B is not something that you develop overnight. Plan B is something that you have to build the foundation for over many years. In other words, how do we build stocks large enough to ensure that if things don't go our way in 60 or 90 days, that we can stand the pressure, we can withstand the losses in munitions or even people. We're not up to it. We weren't up to it before this. We aren't up to it now. But this goes back to the so-called rosy scenario, all of the key assumptions about Iran. And all the assumptions about Iran are wrong, So you have to, before you do anything, you have to define the use of military power based on what's your strategic purpose, what's the operational method, in other words, how do you propose to do it, and what do you want things to look like when it's over? I don't see much any evidence for anything other than this is what we want it to look like. Now you go out and make it happen. Nobody bothered to come back and say, this is the wrong instrument. We're not going to get to where you want to go this way. So, can you rapidly withdraw from danger if the mission fails? How do you tailor your forces to deal with geography, logistics? Do the forces that you have, do they have enough firepower, mobility, manpower, and materiel? I mean, we just go on and on and on. I don't think all of those questions were adequately answered. And so, we went into this in a rush without thinking it through very carefully.
And they certainly did. They thought they would get regime change. Netanyahu talked Trump into it. And remember, the protests in January, the so-called protests, the riots, what they are, Mossad whipped that up. A couple of the Israeli politicians even mentioned it on their X accounts. Like sending praise to them, hoping they're safe. And then it went from 10,000 to 30,000 to 60,000. It was 3,500. Patrick Henningsen went there and verified it. But mainstream media won't tell you this. And again, regime change. Do you think bombing people is going to make them want to be on your side? No, that does not work. We've seen it multiple times, the rally round the flag. And the young, more progressive Iranians, the ones who were opposed to the Islamic regime. At the start of the war, Israel carpet bombed the area of Tehran where they all live. And all they did was push them towards the IRGC and the Islamic regime. Look at all the video footage coming out from the streets of Tehran. All the people on the streets waving flags, praising the regime. In a way, this had to happen. It had to happen because now, hopefully, Israel, they can't keep going on the way they are. I want everyone to live in peace. Stick to your borders and get on with it. Stop trying to expand. Stop bombing all your neighbours. This paranoia that anyone who's brown wants to exterminate all the Jews. It's nonsense. Nonsense. But I just thought that was an important video to share. Off to work. Have a nice day.